This is episode 2 of the SDR series as part of the Revenue Revolution podcast. Hello and welcome back to the SDR podcast series as part of the Revenue Revolution podcast. I'm Reese, fan in SDR at Joint Flows. Today, I'm welcoming my second guest onto the podcast, Aieak Ahmed from Improvata. How are you doing?
I am well. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm trying to just make the most of the warm weather that's coming now. That's left us.
Yeah, I already miss it every day. Think about it. It's just dark now.
Yeah, the days are closing in now. Just trying to make the most of what's left of the summer. It does feel warmer this kind of year, but yeah,
Agreed.
awesome. Well, look, I appreciate you doing this. Thanks so much, and it's great to come on and we're speaking to SDRs about their roles and whatnot, and
hmm
what's the tips and tricks and things that people can do to smash that role. You've been an SDR for a few years now. Tell us a bit about your background. Where you're from, and did you study at university? What kind of path have you gone through to go into the SDR role?
Yeah, I took a little bit of a different path. My family, we spent most of my life over in Reigate in the middle of Surrey. And then I went to university over in Bristol UE or Bristol University of West England, where I studied biomedical science because I love human biology. But then I realized just because you like learning about it doesn't mean you want to do 40 years of it. So, um, yeah, so I did that for a few years working in a lab, which is a bit different. And then when the time came to make a career pivot, which I did at like 23, which is earlier than most when they try to do a career pivot, I found myself going into sales and moved to London and I've been doing that ever since.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I can sympathise with you there because I did biology at university, so fellow biomedical, if you like, and
Mm.
it's just I think when you look out at the career that you could do, it's either you go on and be a lecturer at university or you do some research, and
Mm.
you know we're not money isn't the source of happiness, but there isn't great earning potential in that kind of career. Not criticizing
Mm.
anyone that does it. We need those people, but I think for me, I was like I wanted to go on and do something that would was going to be less lab based and things like that. So I saw when I was obviously doing some research here. So was it signpost diagnostics that you did? Is
Yeah,
that the
yeah.
company?
So it was largely at that time built off COVID testing for people who
Yeah.
wanted to be able to enter a new country because you need a negative test.
Mm,
And you go and get yourself swabbed. That goes into a little tube of solution or whatever that is. And that got sent to a lab. And I ran a lab for about a year and a half
wow.
doing that, which was great. Um, but like I think more or less anyone who does a job at some point to earn something while they're part-time, they're doing it in customer service. And I just preferred that kind of environment of just talking to people, even strangers every day. I
Mm,
found my biggest personal growth being going from relatively introverted to more extroverted by doing that. And I was like, I need to go back to that. I can't be
mm.
stuck in a room all day, every day, like a lab would be. Um, yeah, so that's sort of where I ended up running away to.
And that's impressive, especially if your viewers that you were more introverted, and then to sort of become more extroverted, you just put yourself in those situations. I feel like that's impressive because you're doing the thing that surely is really uncomfortable for you to do. So I love that. You moved on from signpost diagnostics, and then your first SDR role was at Birdie.
Yes.
How was that? How did you find working there? I do know a little bit about them. I think they do some sort of healthcare technology, don't they? For is it care homes and whatnot?
So it's an important distinction that they definitely say there is the difference between a care home and home care. So
Right.
rather
Okay.
than an older individual who needs help of some sort, whether that's through basic tasks or actual nurse-led medication and other tasks like that, instead of doing it at a dedicated facility that they stay at, which would be a care home, it would be in their own homes. And people would come to them multiple times a day or a week. That's home care or domiciliary care. And That was really interesting. It was a SaaS solution that was a mix of like care planning, operational stuff, as well as rotors, finance, that kind of thing. And that was, I think, compared to what I've heard about other sales roles, first entry level sales roles, that was a hell of a boot camp. In that
Wow.
we didn't do loads and loads of calls, but we did all the call. It was everything was basically calls in terms of doing
Mm,
pipeline generation because we do 30, 40 calls on average, at least in SMB and mid-market, but we have over a 50% connect rate. So
wow.
it's near impossible to do loads and loads and loads of calls because everyone's picking up
Wow. Okay.
and people love to talk. We, I say that and it sounds funny, but it's like compared to what I do now, where it's like
Right.
people, I get calls from salespeople all the time. In that sort of industry, it's not as filled up with people selling into those industries as much,
Mm,
at least from my personal experience. So they're not bombarded with loads of sales calls. So when we make those calls, they're maybe not as fatigued by sales calls, I think. And it meant that we got good, really good at handling objections, at pitching, at becoming a trusted advisor, at doing discovery. Like, if I can remember one thing, and there was loads of things to remember, but this philosophy my head of sales development there, Dan, at the time had was that the level of discovery and the ability to be able to unpick and understand a person's pain points, their implications, and for them to think about the idea of what would happen if they actually made a change or didn't make a change. That jump from what an SDR can do to what an account exec or an account manager or any sort of closing role can do, that gap should be next to nothing.
mm.
Like you should be able to feel like you could close it if you wanted to, if you were unable to. So I don't want to toot my own horn, but having seen people I've worked with and seen where they've gone and just heard them on the phones constantly, I was like, oh, we can do this well. So it
No,
wasn't
nice.
a case of just elevate pitch and just hammer it home eventually. Like we got empathetic, we understood what they were saying, and I think that everyone should do that. They should find a role that gets them to, and it's difficult to do. It's not everyone does that. I think people are changing to that, and they have been for the last few years, but that's definitely something that I'm thankful that I got as a first opportunity.
No, awesome, awesome. Yeah, and you've got to back yourself, haven't you? You know, in those situations.
A
And
bit, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And to your first point, then. So what I'm understanding is you're saying that the people you were calling were not as familiar with sales calls, so you had
Mhm.
more conversations with them, and then that practice meant you got really good at having the conversation, finding pains, dealing with the objections. Is that what you're saying? It just gave you so much practice because you were
Yeah,
speaking
yeah,
to
and like on
so
average,
much
most of
talk
us were
time.
doing, yeah, yeah, and on average, most of us were doing more than an hour a day. And it wasn't from a bunch of 30 seconds sitting on a dial tone. It was people actually having conversations.
No,
And
no, awesome.
yeah, and like it's a very privileged situation to be in because like now I don't have that remotely close at all. I talk
Right.
to cybersecurity people and people in hospitals. They don't pick up anywhere near as much.
And
And
they're
if
used
they
to it.
do, they don't get me anywhere near as much time. They're like, I can give you 2 minutes. I'm like,
Right.
okay, I better say what's the most important things and hope that they want to talk more. But yeah.
For sure. It could be a challenge. I mean, I speak to salespeople, and some CROs won't even give you 30 seconds. So
Mm,
it's always a challenge. But that's the nature of cold calling, isn't it?
yeah.
Just one last question on this, and then we'll move on. So you seem like you remember quite a fair bit from working at Birdie about the product and whatnot. And we'll definitely come on to Improvata in a second and what they do. Do you find how important do you think it is that even as an SDR, your knowledge of the product is going to help you succeed in the role? Do you think it's important, or do you think that, because there are some views that sales leaders say, look, you just need to know the pain statements, you just need to be able to pull those out and have a conversation, and then pass it on to an AE and leave it to them. Where do you sit in that kind of argument?
I think early on, when you are not necessarily new to being an SDR, but new to the role you're in, I can definitely see the value in learn the challenges that they come across, the implications, and then be able to steer the conversation when appropriate to the areas that we can help to solve. Try and be as efficient as possible when you have the calls that you have. I can absolutely appreciate that. And maybe that makes a lot of sense when you only have so much connectivity with a person on a phone call. I think after a while, you start to want to feel more confident in being able to answer questions that you don't want to necessarily rely on a closer or an SE or solutions engineer or anyone technical to be able to answer. So there's definitely been times where I've gone out of my way to find the answers for things just because it puts me in a position of more credibility. Because
Sure.
now I even had an exec in one of our customers a couple of days ago reach out to me rather than their we call it RSM or regional sales manager
Mm.
or their AE basically. They reached out to me rather than them, which is nice. Maybe they're just searching Bravata and in their email, and that was the first person who came up, and that's absolutely fine too. But I was
Plenty
able to
emails,
answer, yeah, literally, the emails I send them. But I was able to answer questions that I think if I didn't go out of my way to find out the answers to before, then I was like, okay, great. So I think after the initial like buzz of learning the role and where you feel like you're doing things on automatic, then it's like, okay, try and pick up things, try and listen to the demos where you can, the analogies being made, and make up your own things. If you're reading notes on, we have our own repositories for the product and stuff made by marketing or made by yeah, our SMEs and stuff, then rewrite it in your own way and what you think makes sense and works. And then it's easy to say, especially if you're in a in-person event and you're now relying on your memory.
Mm.
Then it gets really easy to just be like, well, I'm saying this, and I know that works because I've seen someone else say it. So
Awesome.
yeah.
No, no, for sure. Um, we'll come back to events. I definitely want to touch on that at some point, especially for us as SDRs. But what I think I'm understanding from you saying there is that product expert, know your product, is going to be helpful to you in the SDR
Hmm.
role. And so I think that's where I sit as well, actually. I don't know many SDRs that don't want to be an AE. And I think that as an AE, you're going to have to be a product expert,
Hmm.
especially if you're selling. So why not get as much knowledge about it as you can whilst you're an SDR? And, if you wanted to progress, it's going to set you up. So I'm definitely in the same camp as you on that one. So, right, let's move on then to Improvata. So, you left Birdie, found another role at Improvata. Talk to me a little bit about what Improvata does. What is it that you do there, and then we'll go on to the role a bit as well.
Yeah, so Improvat is a digital identity and access management set of solutions. So the challenges that we normally come across, particularly within healthcare, but any other organization or industry that deals with sensitive data, tends to be around the idea that, particularly with certain individuals like clinicians, they have to access data that's highly sensitive. They need to manipulate it in a certain way. And often they have to use things like shared devices. So they move from one computer to another, one device to another, multiple applications, especially if they get more and more digitized. So they're constantly logging in and logging out. And the way we've gone about doing that is consolidating that into some sort of way for them to have their credentials injected. So the most common way, particularly within the NHS, tends to be around having a badge. So they normally have badges when they have to access via doors. We come in and we add an extra purpose to that with a proximity card reader that we provide. They tap in, all their credentials are logged in, not just Windows, but email, HR, imaging, electronic health records, everything. And then once they're done, they can tap off, they tap in again, and everything signs out and allows the next person to come in. It saves a bunch of time in them logging in, which it sounds small, but I've not heard a single clinician tell me that that hasn't annoyed them. Like they
Yeah,
have to go back to sticky notes and
right.
paper just to remember their 16-digit password for that one specific application.
Mm,
And then if they want to go around it, they share it amongst their department, or they forget it and they have to send a ticket to IT. And I have IT people tell me they just spend their entire day dealing with forgetting passwords, which is an absolute waste of time when they could do better things. And then you have them forgetting passwords and just saying, like, "Oh, can I just borrow your password so I can look in?" And thanks to the Freedom of Information Act, you have yourself as a patient, you can go in and be like, I want to know who accessed everything about my data, my medical information. If you only dealt with 5 people in your 2-day stay, you do not want to find out that more than 5 people looked at your data.
mm.
It's a
Yeah,
complete
for sure.
violation, and hospitals have and will be sued, rightfully so. But even if they do get sued, you still feel like it's been an infringement on your privacy.
Mm.
So we have worked with hospitals, government agencies, etc., to be able to make this more succinct, secure, and give a sense of time back for clinicians to do their job properly and securely, but also to give a sense of privacy back to patients and anyone else whose data is sensitive and housed anywhere other than where they only have access to.
Interesting. So it sounds fairly complex then. And yeah, I imagine the security of that kind of information, as you said, especially with patient confidentiality, they're going to
Mhm.
want to, have a confidence in doing the people that are working with them, the clinicians, they're being strict with their data and whatnot. So that's awesome to learn a bit more about that. I've noticed a theme though, and I'm sure that this is probably deliberate from your part. Biomedical science at university, then you did the sign diagnostics, then Birdie, which was healthcare, and then Improvata, which is also healthcare focused. But you're now
Yes.
attacking the sales side of it. Is that
Mhm.
that's obviously deliberate? It must be, and obviously play into your strengths and your knowledge as having studied biomedical science. Do you find that's helpful to you in your roles? Do you lean on that at all when you're having conversations with people? Yeah, look, I studied this,
Um,
and
well, to be fair, it helped me get my job for sure, my current job,
nice, nice.
because my former SVP, who I used to report to, he he said to me, because of my previous experience working in a lab, he felt that that was something that I could utilize. And I've had that in some conversations. I don't say it often. I think
No,
more just my personality, my openness to have conversations and not be jittery about it has been more useful than anything else. And just telling them what I've heard from others. But there have been a few times where, if anything, it's been more of a pattern interrupt. People are like, "You've worked in a lab." I'm like, "Yeah, and now I'm here. So this is a bit different for you." And they're like, "Yeah, definitely. I don't normally come across that." So yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily helped me to do my job, but it has helped me to get this job. So I'll take it.
fair enough. I love the honesty. I love the honesty, and so that's awesome. So then, obviously, SDR at Improvata. How big's the team, and how long have they been doing the SDR function, or how long has the SDR function been there?
So we have a couple of SDR teams because we're a US-based company and we're global. And before I got there, there was maybe, I want to say like 5 or 6, and they were all based in Massachusetts in the US.
Oh wow,
And I came in and I was told I was going to be the first SDR in the UK. Cool.
nice.
I've sold to the UK, so that works. And then I got given a list of all the sellers that I'd be dealing with, which apparently was multiple. And I saw some in parts of Europe that I do not speak the local language,
Right.
and some in time zones that when wake up, they have finished their workday, i.e., Australia. And I was like,
Yeah.
what was this expectation again? They're like, do what you can because actually you're not the first, you are the first SDR in the UK, but you are the first SDR in international, which in Imprivata essentially is everything outside North America. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of the world. But yeah. And so that was going through 2020, what year are we now? 25. So 2024. I'm realizing we're actually near the end, so that's going to be a headache, but that'll be fun.
Oh, it's flown by,
It
hasn't it?
really has. How's it October? It's halfway.
Life is just passing me by.
Oh, that sounds a bit sad to say, but yeah, it's true. But yeah, so I was the first one in international, and a lot of what was going on there was like there was no real process. A lot of the sellers I was selling into or selling marketing essentially had either been very long term at Imprivata, like we're talking plus 10 years, and they've never had an SDR. The only time they've ever dealt with an SDR is someone in the US who redirects a demo request to them that's come in.
Right.
And more often than not, they're always booking in with the wrong person in the wrong time zone with the wrong SE
Mm.
because they just don't know because everything outside, because international has essentially been siloed for so long. So when I came in and I was like, well, I better teach them what I do. One or two of them felt I was coming in to steal their territory, which was fun. I was like, I promise I'm not doing that. Others, I had to sort of be like, this is not a teacher-student relationship. This is me helping you and you help me. Like, if you aren't hitting target and it's because you haven't got enough pipeline, that's my responsibility to get you to. And being at my last job, that helped me to realize that that's the only way that anyone has ever been successful at Birdie, to have that one-on-one relationship.
Mm.
So actually, to be fair, thinking about it now, I don't think anyone was doing that.
Right.
It had to be a one-on-one relationship. So I would tell them what I'm doing. They would recommend certain things. I would tell them, I want you to reach out to this person because I'm reaching out to this person. And they were open to it. The moment they started seeing things in their calendars that they wouldn't have got otherwise, they were like, okay, maybe Aieak's worth the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, they had to build out a process. A lot of what was coming on from the US in terms of marketing, emails, copy, everything that the US was doing, whether it was the SDR team and the marketing team, I was like, I'm not touching any of that. Because honestly, if I sent someone a cold email of 200 words, in UK, Ireland, Australia, they're at least those are more conversational. They're like, I would never read that. And I'm like, I'm rewriting everything. So my first few months, it was literally me clearing out all the admin, teaching every RSM what it is I do, trying to learn what each individual region wanted or were at. We sell so many products, and some of the products are very progressive. Like you buy one, then you take on others. The UK was much more further ahead than Australia. The Australians had different compliance needs to the Middle East. Um, Certain accounts you don't touch, certain accounts you can. Others were very more carte blanche. So that was a lot of learning as well. I had a lot of autonomy, I still do, which is great. And it's very different to what I had in my last job. And also because of time zones, it was all very email heavy as well, at least for Australia, Southeast Asia, sometimes or Middle East as well. When I was dealing at the time, mainland Europe for like Spain, Italy. I was writing Netherlands. I was writing emails in a language I didn't know, and I was like, "Let's hope for the best."
Really?
And surprisingly, I booked some. So I was like,
Wow.
"Great!"
Wow.
And luckily, the success of me as an SDR meant that there was a restructuring. I was then reporting to a manager in Germany who was got after and then she went and expanded the team. So 2025, I think there's at least six of us now, myself included. And we hope to keep expanding that because at least in international for Imprivata, the SDR team is worth it. So that's been going well.
It sounds like it. Awesome. So you were the first person, APAC and EMEA, and now there's six of you, expanded out from the success that you've had. That's awesome. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
then obviously you've there's been a lot of education and changing people's minds that perhaps weren't used to people having an SDR beneath them that was gonna, I shouldn't say beneath them, working with an SDR that was going to be booking them pipeline. You said that it kind of changed their mind as soon as they saw that you were booking things in for their diaries. which is obviously awesome. Did you find was there anything else that helped you with that? Certainly with, you know, I had this in some previous experience, a job that I was in, when you're going into a role where you're fairly junior, and you end up working with people that are in a role above you, that is they're also 10 years, 15 years older than you as well, and that the change in their minds when they're perhaps maybe a little bit stuck in their ways is a challenge. And so, were there anything else that you did to like navigate that?
So another thing, for example, was I went out of my way to reach out to all of them, told them who I am, what my role has been brought in for, and I'd love to be able to speak with them. So I had one-on-ones with all of them. There was 8 of them at the time. So that was great. And I think just me coming across as someone who wasn't new, I didn't need to necessarily be onboarded in the same way as because I've done it before.
Mm,
I just need to know like what can I do for you? Like, do you have is is this a actual valuable situation for you? One area, for example, said, you know what, it's nice that you're here, but I actually don't think I need you because, for example, for them, they do telemarketing as their lead generation because their region was multiple languages and that I can't speak. So they were like,
yeah,
okay, perfect. If that works for you, then I can just deal with your demo requests if they come in and send them your way, and that's that. And they were like, yeah, it's perfectly fine. But we have a very nice mutual respect. But then there's others who are like, I don't want you to touch my customers just yet. Just see the net news. And then I started booking in some things. Some of them were impressed with the fact that I would send them like 5 paragraphs of everything I learned from them from a half an hour discovery call I'd booked in with them with a prospect. And they come back to me and they're like, I feel super prepared for this demo that I'm about to have. And I'm like, great, I want to touch your customers now because I'm doing it with everyone else. And they're like, go for it. Sometimes you just need to sort of match the energy. Like my last manager said, like, match the energy of your prospects sometimes when you're on a call. I just did the same with my reps and it worked. I was like, all right, great. Sometimes you just need to be a little arrogant in order to get what you want. And sometimes if you have the information, if you have the results for them, then are they really going to say no? No seller is going to turn down not necessarily free money, but free ops, essentially.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Interesting. It's interesting thoughts there. And I will come on to a handover, which you touched on there. I definitely
Mhm.
want to go into that later on. But so obviously we mentioned about the team then. So talk to me about what's a day in the life of Aieak look like then? You know, day to day, how do you set up? Do you set up your day with structure? Do you have certain things that you do every single day? Or
The funny thing is that at my last job, I was poor with time management in terms of like I would have a few call blocks, but like not much else in between. And I was never like that stickler to it, especially with the call blocks, for example. So when I wasn't hitting number, which sometimes was that was my biggest issue at Birdie, I was inconsistent with my results. Like I would do well with calls, I'd send the emails out. I was often top 2, top 3 in terms of monthly um activity, but I was never the results weren't showing it. And one example of how I tried to tackle that was how about I just be better with my time management and see if that does something. And that was working, to be fair. The time management side that worked, and I translated that to here. But the problem is that I would have people book in time with me at a time that works for them, which doesn't necessarily always work for me, i.e., 6 in the morning. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm not going to the office that day. That's fine. But it's like, okay, well, then in that case, I don't want to be working till 5 p.m., for example. So, or like I would have something from marketing send me something from Australia, and I'd wake up in the morning and I'd see a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is something I need to prioritize now, even though my morning is booked up with my own stuff that I had planned.
So realistically, and I know you're not going to like the sound of this, and anyone who listens probably is not going to like this, but my calendar is often not, it's very dynamic sometimes, which I
Sure.
hate sometimes. I'm just looking at it and I'm like, what has happened to my calendar? But if anything, I think the number one, I think the thing that I do for myself is, no, there's two things. So one, every morning there's a few admin things I always want to do. So I put that in for 8:30 every morning. And I have a block for lunch, which rarely actually happens. And then I have a block around 5:30, I think it is. No, 5 till 6 of what do I literally call it? I literally call it um update RSMs and prepare next day. One thing I remember from a former manager I had was make sure you plan the next day before the next day starts. So don't do it in the morning. You want to be like as active as you can. And if you're planning, that's a relatively low level task. Try and do something that's productive and actually have it planned out so you're not surprised either when you're looking at it like, oh, I need to go plan out my day kind of thing. Another thing I would say is that what I try to do is I always come up with lots of ideas of things I want to do, who I want to reach out to, what campaigns I want to do for different products. People ask me like in other parts of the organization if I could help them with something, or I see new content is out, or I need to focus on a new area for a different rep, and I'm like, okay, I'll block it out in my time so that, or if I have an idea and I'm like, okay, I want to write this idea down, but let me block it out as well so it's there. So like uh today, for example, I had three different ideas that I had blocked out from when I it came to mind a few days ago. So that's how I'm trying to keep myself busy. So a lot of the stuff in my calendar is all like email campaign, call block here, that kind of thing. I do a couple call blocks as well at like 12/1 at night. I don't do it often, but like I will see a lot of opens and clicks and no replies, and I'm like, you need to be called. So once a few of those come in, I'm like, okay, let me go call them. And my manager doesn't mind. She's like, you do that, take the afternoon or the morning, start later, whatever works for you, which is great. But
Nice.
yeah, unfortunately, to answer your question, there's not loads of structure, but it works somehow.
No, I understand that. Has to be dynamic sometimes,
Mhm.
especially for someone like yourself that's managing different time zones. I can understand that. It sounds to me like there are one or two non-negotiables though. The session that you said in the morning at 8:30, a calling block, and then your evening where you plan in the next day. Love
Yeah.
that, by the way. You must project, prepare for the following day, the day before, so that you know what you're doing. Makes a lot of sense, and it's something that any SDRs that are watching this and or the prospective SDRs, they can as a good tip for sure. Aside from those ones, then, how do you manage? You said there you call sometimes at midnight and 1 a.m. That must be quite, affects your social life or a bit probably. I know you said it only happens occasionally. Do you have certain calling blocks for certain countries, and are you limited to? Can you call any countries in the regions that you cover, or have you got a certain sort of regions that you're specifically targeting?
So I have a little carte blanche depending on where I know I can book opportunities without pushback
Right.
from our product teams. Just because it's like, do we have the compliance? Do they have coverage for Amazon Web Services for certain products, for example? Can we ship there? Um, that things like that. So there's other details as well, but I won't say. But like also, what does the regional sales manager suggest is what is best placed for my time and their time? I can't just pick any country. We have set ones where we're like, we've seen it work here. We have distribution and channel partners that we can work with on the ground. Let's focus on those countries. So say, for example, I went to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia a few months ago for a HIMSS APAC, which is a big health technology and information event. It's the largest one in that region. And that was in Malaysia. and we saw a lot of Malaysians and Singaporeans, and those were our main two countries. There's other countries around it, but those were the ones where we've had the most experience. So those are the ones where I spend the most amount of my time in that region, for example. But yeah, the call blocks tend to be around time zones. So right now, the UK is about to move back an hour in a few weeks. So
Yes.
Australia, some states go from like on the East Coast states go from 9 hours ahead to 10 and 11 hours ahead in a few weeks' time. And yeah, so like say for example, those ones I may call at 2, 3 a.m. if necessary. But realistically, I do very well at this job booking via email, luckily.
Right.
So I don't have to do much of that. Um yeah, so
Awesome.
that
That
works.
leads me in nicely because I was about to ask you, what's your best channel? You say an email.
Hmm.
What makes you so successful at booking meetings via email then? What's the secret? What kind of tips and tricks can you give to SDRs watching this? What should they do?
My old rep used to say this, and I say this to some of my old colleagues, my current colleagues as well, is shove value down their throat.
Wow. Okay.
It's very graphic, but it is true.
Yeah.
It's just like you don't just want to be another seller selling a non-consequential technology. You don't want to sell a
Sorry,
nice
that got me a
house.
little bit there.
That's all right. But like there's a lot of technology out there that people are going to see as a nice to have than a need to have.
Right.
And some people are going to buy from you just because they like you or they think that you are worth their time. More than maybe a competitor with a similar product. So I just need to be in that space where people come back to me and I send them a bunch of stuff and I'm like, here's this about digital identity. Here's this about compliance requirements that is needed in your country. What are you doing about it? Not even what are you doing about it. It would be like framing as like, how have you gone about solving this? Making the assumption that you've already done it. So I'm asking for their advice, or I'm uh, another thing one of my old managers used to say was doing it as like professional whispering. We have heard that someone in this hospital in this part of the similar country to you has dealing with this issue, and they've gone about solving it by needing to prioritize X, Y, and Z. Love to know if this is something you've thought about, if this is on the radar for 2026 coming in, that kind of thing, and starting a conversation from there, just like let the ops come to you kind of thing. And like eventually, even on a phone call, people will like talk and you just then eventually they just say, so what do you guys do? When they have that curiosity, you're in golden, but that doesn't always happen. So I also do that over email as well. I try to bolden certain bits. I try to keep it no more than 50, 60 words in the body of the text or no more than 5 words in a subject line. Send them PDFs of certain things, but digestible ones, not the really long stuff, just things that they can read. And even if they don't open it, I'll just take a screenshot of something I want them to look at and put it in the body of the text. Like, this is some of the stuff that I thought was interesting for you personally. Maybe I'd personalize it and mention like, oh, I saw that you were going to this event. I wasn't able to join it this time around. I'm in the UK. I don't get to go to all these events globally, but I'll just
Yeah.
mention like I wasn't able to attend this one. Would love to know like what was interesting about it, all that kind of thing. People love to go to health tech events to see what's latest in AI. I don't sell a particularly amazing or really engaging AI technology where they can diagnose someone somehow. Like that's interesting for some people, but I'd be like, but it's important to make sure that you have the foundations for your platforms and your infrastructure and stuff like that, and see where they go from there and try to put myself in a position where they think this guy knows what he's talking about. And the amount of times where I'm on the phone or on an email and they say, that you're probably the expert in this, that kind of thing. That I would say is a big advice I would give to all SDRs. You are in a privileged position to be able to hear and talk to people amongst your entire region in a certain persona about certain challenges. You get good at knowing what other people are thinking and saying. It's like certain people are very siloed into just their company or just their department,
and they only hear stuff within themselves or their local network. If I get to tell someone in London about a challenge that's similar that's being dealt with in Bristol, then it's like, okay, let me share that with you and see if you are coming across the same kind of thing. Like, people recognize me as an expert, and I'm like, if you say so. But sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe I do know what I'm talking about. And then they're like, yeah, it just works from there. And email, phone calls, LinkedIn, all that sort of working. Try and end your day feeling like you've done everything you can. So
Yeah, absolutely. You can't leave anything on the table, can you?
mhm,
So email's the best channel. Looking at where we're at in 2025,
mhm.
with the introduction of AI SDRs, one of the main things that people are saying is that they've killed the email channel because inboxes are flooded with so many emails from these automated bots that are just, scraping some info from LinkedIn or just putting some really poorly researched content into an email and sending it to prospects. Have you found that that's impacted your industry much? I don't know whether there is a prevalence of people prospecting, your prospects through email in that way, or has it affected you at all?
No, not at all. For cybersecurity reasons, if you sell that sort of technology, you cannot be hiring an AI SDR. Plain
Sure,
and simple.
sure.
It is, you would have to like ask permission of the prospect, be like, are you happy to be contacted by an AI SDR? Who's saying yes to that? Realistically. People don't even like it like in their personal lives or like being cold called it when they're at home. They're not gonna like it in their business. They're not gonna opt into it realistically. People also like that person-to-person interaction. And even though I book in time, even though I get time in with people over email, I'm booking it in with them to speak to me or to meet me at a demo or meet someone at a demo. So, and I'm multi-channeling at the same time. Like I'll send them a voice note over phone or over LinkedIn. Like I've connected with them. They see my face, they can look at my profile and be like, this is an actual human being. Like very rarely have I ever booked anyone in purely through email, and they probably don't look me up. I've like I don't have LinkedIn sales nav at the moment, but I would see someone has opened up and I see that they're from X company. I'm like, I literally emailed you like yesterday. Like you're clearly looked me up, which is fine. I'm an easy name to find, to be fair. So,
So you do outreach multi-channel, of
mhm.
course. But email you find is the what that opens the doors for you then, or you absolutely book the most meetings just on email, or do you find it is that three-pronged approach, LinkedIn, calls, email? Where would you say that you sit there?
It's a mix.
It's a
I mean,
mix.
there's definitely some that I've just
Yeah.
emailed, and then they're like, yeah, we'd be interested to learn more. Um, and almost always, because we sell multiple products that are to sometimes pitch to different personas and deal with different challenges, then it's like, okay, let me book in some time, chat for 15 to 20 minutes, and I can run a proper discovery on you and see what products are actually aligned to you. Let me diagnose your situation for you and get you there. So that would be my most common way of doing things if they're not current customers. If they are current customers, then it's like, okay, perfect. I'll book you in from there. I don't need to necessarily do much else. But also, I've met some of these people like at events, especially in the UK. So they know of me, they've met me, or they know of our team here locally. So it's always going to be a mix. Like, I don't think I've really booked anyone in from multiple like channels for a single individual. Um, but they know of me or they would direct me to the right person, that kind of thing. So, and I don't think that's realistically ever going to work with AI. So,
No, fair. It's it always helps if you're reaching out to someone that you either cold calling them or you've sent them an email, and they can see that they've got a LinkedIn profile view from the person from yourself, and they'll be like, oh, that is kind of, maybe they won't mention it on the call or come back to you and say, but it'll help with like them understanding who you are and what you're trying to say. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Last few questions on this SDR stuff then. I wanted to touch on the handover, which is a key thing. How do you hand over well to AEs and whatnot? And so talk to me about the processes that you run and what you think best practice is then to do that.
So it's a bit of a mix, because I would book certain people in who we already have existing relationships with. And maybe they want an update to our products. So I don't really have to do much from there. It's like, hey, so and so who you've met dozens of times, from when you signed them years ago to every POC and catch-up meeting, etc. They're interested in this product now. Chuck it in. It's in your calendar for next Thursday at 10. They're like, perfect. And I don't need to do any handover. They've sold that product so many times, they can do a little catch-up and then do sell. It's more often than not when it's someone we don't know or someone who's net new. And then it's like, okay, I will try and run through MedPick as much as I can in terms of understanding what I mean, as much as I can, but realistically, do I have their pains? Can they quantify it, or can they only talk about it qualitatively? What's the impact? Company level, individually, team level, if I can. And then when they kind of want to make a change, what would be of interest for them, what they've seen from us so far, and why would it be of value to spend some time with us, that kind of thing. What any implications, who's involved in the process, who would they like to invite and why, that kind of stuff. Yeah, and that normally fills up a couple paragraphs of information, unless I've already met with them as in a one-on-one or anything like that internally. And then I just hand it over. And then depending on if it's the right time zone, then I may jump on the call and do an introduction, be like, hi, Reese, hope you're doing well. Thanks for the conversation we had so far. We had a little bit of a conversation about X, Y, and Z, just for everyone else in the room to know what's going on. To help facilitate with that, I have brought along Grant, I've brought along Neil to help facilitate the conversation, show you a little bit about what we do, the challenges we've come across, and how they are similar to those that you've mentioned. And then we can take it from there, and they'll be your point of contact going forward. And then they go.
Nice. That's something that we like, that I like doing here at Joint Flows, is that getting on the call and introducing, when I'm getting either our salespeople in there. It's also because I just feel like it sets the conversation up better. If I'm the one that they've spoken to and then I'm not there on the call that I've set up, they're going to be like, oh, well, now I'm speaking to these people that I've never met before. I just feel like it's a great way to smooth them, that process from one to another. I haven't said that very well, but you get what I'm trying to you get what I'm trying to say.
I think it's also like you want to set the precedent as to what their experience with this company is going to be. And if they've had this conversation with you and you've developed this relationship for however short amount of time, then it's like you've set the standard. So at least continue that standard by having a little bit of a handoff, being like, thanks so much. I've done the best I can for you by introducing you to the right people so that they can help solve your problems and provide you what you've been looking for. And then hopefully that sets like a tone for what their experience with Improvator is going to be, whether they buy us or not. And then it's a flash solution. So we're hoping that not only have they bought us today, but they keep buying from us.
Yes.
In the future.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And for us at Joint Flows, sometimes not all of them I'll stay for, because we have a rule: we don't outnumber the prospect on a call. It's just something that they know that we do. So, but I'll always get on there, introduce, and then say, look, I'm going to leave you to it now, and then hand it over in that way, because you should have a better conversation. So so just last thing then on this AE handover stuff. One thing, and a few things I've discussed in the past, were that there is some strategies where they want to hand over to each individual AE, or in your case, RSM, in a way that they want to be handed over to, if that makes sense. Like they tailor it for the person that they're giving it to. What do they like? What kind of content do they want to have handed over and things like that? Do you find that you do that, or do you have your own process that everyone expects from Aieak, that you're doing
So my
to hand over?
manager has sort of gone out of her way to meet up with every RSM and be like, what are your expectations in terms of handover and stuff like that? Luckily for the RSMs I deal with, they're very like, do what you like. We trust what you do. But for others, especially those who are relatively new to the process, or others who maybe, say, for example, have specific things that they would look for, like they would want to make sure certain metrics are involved. So for hospitals, it would be like how large the hospital, number of staff, number of sites, that kind of stuff, quantitative stuff, like some RSMs prefer, especially in certain regions that I don't cover. Others would like to make sure that certain levels are involved, like want to only have a booking if they're C-level or director, whereas others are like, as long as they're a manager or they actually oversee something and have direct line to someone who's a decision maker, then I'm fine with that because I can work that. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever you prefer. So we have a little bit of a formal / informal process where it's like every SDR has been given a kind of a sheet or a document being like, these are the expectations that they want in terms and in what process, with who. If they are ICP, then you can book them directly in for an hour. If they're not ICP and you haven't qualified them, or you don't feel like you can qualify them any further at your current abilities, then maybe you can book them in for 15 minutes with the RSM to do further qualification, that kind of thing. So the solution we sell can be very industry agnostic. I think that's the right word.
Yeah.
So it can be sold to different industries. So if it's healthcare and it's big enough, then it's an easy book. If it's outside that and it's something that we're familiar with, sometimes an easier book. If it's not, if it's an industry we're not unfamiliar with, then it's like, okay, let's take a step back and bare bones it and start discovery from as early as as basic as we can. And sometimes that involves a shorter conversation before anything that's considered an op.
Right. Interesting. So what I'm understanding there is that you're saying, depending on how much of a conversation you've had with a prospect or what kind of industry it's in, how difficult it was to book, so to speak, that impacts how you're handing it over to the AE. How much, what your strategy is, which is that's really interesting to think about, actually.
We don't want to waste their time at the end of the day.
No,
Like, we
for
don't want to
sure.
they're so busy that you don't want to book in an hour for them to be like, oh, we disqualified them in the first 10 minutes.
Yes.
And now I've got this 50 minutes that I could have better spent speaking to someone else that now I need to kind of scrap time for. And that would be the worst thing as an SDR. I wouldn't say the worst. It's an unfortunate thing as an SDR to do. When you would rather give them something that's good. And also, you don't want to get all excited that you've got something in and only find out it's actually ended up with £0 to your name. So
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. So I think what I was trying to say is that what I understood you were saying was about the kind of conversations that you've had. Obviously, you have a standard all the time that you don't want to book rubbish meetings. Like, I understand that, but depending on what industry they're in, that can impact the kind of handover that you give. There isn't like a bog standard, like I want to tick all these boxes for a meeting that I've booked to hand over to the AE, which is what I understand that you were saying. That's right. Am I right in thinking that? Awesome. Which is interesting. It's interesting to think about. So we've spoken about the SDR role, then LinkedIn, calls, emails, how to write a good email. We've spoken about handovers and whatnot. So thinking just about the SDR role then itself and what you're going to do day to day, what would your advice be then to someone that is starting as an SDR? What's your top 3 things that you would say, look, if you want to be successful, you should do these 3 things?
As trying to get a role, or they're new to a role that they've just started?
They're just starting a role. They've landed that SDR role. They're coming into it. They've probably got their first 30 days, 30, 60, 90 days mapped out. What would you say are the things that they need to be doing to set themselves up for success?
Bite the bullet and try and find a way to call as early as possible. Do everything that is remotely uncomfortable that comes with being an SDR and do that as early as possible. Get on the phones as quickly as possible, even if you don't feel like you know that much. Try and avoid the idea of analysis paralysis. Like, don't overthink it. Just do. Like, if you overthink every conversation you're about to have, you would have overthought it for 5 minutes. You go call them, they didn't pick up. You move on to the next person. You can't have a cold call. You can't have a call block for an hour or two and only made 10 dials and no pickups because you've been thinking for 5 minutes each time. Like, try and find a process that works for you. Absolutely emulate the best people around you, but don't feel you have to copy them. Like, work out what works for you and try and treat your calls and how you talk to people as much as you would to a stranger or someone you know in your regular life. Like, yes, you're talking to execs and stuff who make 6 figures plus and manage 100 staff and have 8 figure plus budgets that they can spend on, and it feels scary. Why wouldn't it? If it didn't feel scary, you clearly don't know the job or you don't care about the job. But the moment you realize that this is someone who you can walk past in Sainsbury's, or you probably sat next to on a train or something like that, and they are just like every other person, sometimes, not always, I would imagine. But the moment you stop being flustered about that, which is easier said than done for sure, then it all becomes natural. So it should be okay.
Awesome. Love those. Don't overthink it. Emulate and learn from the best people and do the uncomfortable things. Those are 3 things I took from you saying that. I love that last one. I have a saying myself: do hard things, easy life. I know it's a common one, but I try and live by that. If you always take an easy road, you're never going to test yourself and you're never going to see what you're capable of. So you've got to do those hard things. I think it's so important, and it's important in a hard career like sales. Where there's lots of rejection, and where you're going to be challenged, you're going to be speaking to people, and you're sometimes going to get asked uncomfortable questions. I'm sure it's the same for yourself. Is that I've been on calls, discovery calls, demos, and you start seeing the conversation. They never go badly. It's never unprofessional or anything like that. But they're asking some real keen questions about the product, and you're like, whoa, sometimes you're going to have those uncomfortable conversations, and you got to get used to it. So, right, what's the next 12, 24 months look like for you then, Aieak? Where do you want to go? Is the path for you to go to be an AE, account manager, or do you want to go into management? What does it look like?
So I would say the next step is I need to get some experience in closing itself. I feel like I have done more or less everything I can as an SDR, having done it for nearly 3 years now. And I'm at a place also where it's like I can see a marked difference between myself and my colleagues, having done it so long, that I'm like, okay, it's time to make a next step. And that next step is probably to close. And I don't mind if it's AE or AM. Here it's a combined thing here. We don't have a
Right.
differentiator. So yes, there's definitely been a lot of opportunities that I've had where it's like I could close this. I have the relationships with multiple people. I've met them, or I've had a half-hour conversation which they've thanked me for having, even though they haven't seen the product yet because I don't do demos. They felt heard, and I like that they get that experience from me. And I always check in on them. Like, I like to bring up I don't want to toot my own horn, but I brought in a lot of ops. And sometimes I'm like, there's certain ops in my mind, even from 6 months ago, I'm like, I remember them very clearly. I know their names, where they're from, what their pains were, and I'll ask the RSM, how are they doing?
and it'll be like they're doing great. Like they've just had a POC, they love it. They've been quoted for this much. They're in stage 4. We might be able to close in this quarter. And I'm like, great. And like if you do enough, then like you feel invested in their stories. So yes, that's definitely what I would want to do. I want to get at least a few years of experience on that. And assuming I do well in that, I could stick in that. If not, I do like the idea of helping out SDRs
Mhm.
in a similar fashion that I did when I used to manage my own lab teams. And I wouldn't be against the idea of maybe circling back to that. But I definitely need experience in closing, I think, full well before I can take that step. So that's 2 avenues I've been thinking about. And I think the one that makes the most sense is closing roles, and then depending on what my hunger is after a few years of trying that and doing hopefully well at that, then we see what I take from there.
Awesome. So it could go either way for you then. You either be an IC or you could be an SDR manager. And I think, yeah, absolutely, you could do either of those. And the success you've had certainly at Improvata with, being the first person in EMEA and APAC and setting up the outbound functions, and now there's 6 of you, that would be really helpful to you if you're managing SDRs. So love that. Coming on to the last question then. So it's a common thing with podcasts. I asked my current guest to leave a question for the next guest. And so Vincent Brown was the last person I had on here. His question I wanted to ask you, it was a great one. What has been the smallest thing that you've changed that's made the biggest impact in either your work or your life?
So I thought about this ages ago. In that, I think I would say I wouldn't even call it small. Maybe it is small, but it's definitely had a huge impact. And it's mainly from just through my 20s is learning to stop sweating the small stuff and start caring about things that don't necessarily need my own effort. If you see a conflict, if you see something that you disagree with, and it's like, would there be any benefit from me telling them otherwise, or trying to win this argument, or exacerbating anything? It's like, is there any positivity? Is there any value for me or anyone else around me or involved from this? No. And I put that into my own cause. Basically, in short, I learned to stop caring about things, which
Yeah,
it's hilarious to say out loud, but it's like I stopped caring about if someone swore to me on the phone or if they're going to ring up my manager because I'm infringing on GDPR. I'm not. You're opted in. I'll opt out for you, but okay. Sometimes I feel bad when it's like, oh, I'm a clinician right now. I'm literally serving as a doctor whilst also being a CIO, and I'm literally on like trying to serve a patient, and I'm like, oh, that's me fully infringing. It's like I feel bad about that. But at the end of the day, like it's also an idea of like I'm here to help you. Like I'm not trying to be like a used car salesman and sell you something that's not going to be of value to you. I've seen it work and I want to help you. So I'm like, okay, perfectly fine. How about I give you a ring to this evening, kind of thing. This is why I'm calling. And I say, and um I try not to let any bad things or any previous like less than ideal experiences from bugging me or letting me be annoyed for the next 10 minutes or something like that. If I need to, then fine, I'll go get a coffee or go for a walk or something like that. But in my job and in my personal life, it's like avoid whatever is going to affect my peace, which is hilarious to say as a salesperson because I'm constantly putting myself in uncomfortable situations. But
yeah.
yes, like just focus on where your efforts can be actually put. So that's the main
Nice.
thing.
Nice. Love that. I kind of think a similar thing, and I realize it's too late on in life. I would say, which is annoying. But sometimes if I hear someone or if I'm out somewhere and someone's saying something I disagree with, and it could be quite outlandish, this opinion that they're holding, and I'll be like, well, they've come to this conclusion by themselves. Am I really going to change their mind? Probably not. And should I even, like, is that a worthy pursuit? Why try and change their mind? Then most of the time, those people don't want to have their mind changed, and it just doesn't go well. So yeah, it's a really important one. And so awesome. Your question to my next guest, then, what would you ask?
This is a really interesting one because I was thinking about this for myself as well, my
Take
career.
your time. It's a tough question because it can be you can ask about the SDR role
Mhm.
or ask about uh, just a
My
life question. Like,
my question is, it actually does relate to the SDR role, but it's one that I feel like there's very mixed answers for, and it's where do you stand on career SDRs? There's a lot of SDRs. There's a lot of SDRs I've worked with who want to get promoted within a year or a year and a half. I saw it at my last company. I would say I'm definitely on at the end where like I've spent a lot of time doing this role. I've done it over two companies, and it's probably on the above average of tenure as an SDR, especially those who are in startups as well, had experience in startups where there's a thing about like try and get quickly to a closing role within 2 years or something like that.
mm,
But then I've spoke with some who are like, I just enjoy creating ops and lead generating, and that's why they've done it for 5+ years. So I'd be curious to know what your next guest thinks on that, and maybe if that's something that will become more and more popular.
awesome, awesome. I've got that written down. Aieak, thanks so much for doing this.
Appreciate it,
Really
Reese.
appreciate you. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak to me, and it was great to chat to you and learn about how you're smashing your role at Improvata. So thanks so much for doing this. I do appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon.
Yes, appreciate it. Thank you so much,
Thanks so
Reese.
much, Aieak. Bye.